Thank you, Group Captain Venkatraman, for this lovely introductions. A warm welcome to all of you. Good evening. Okay, wonderful. So, in the next 1 hour, we are going to share some of the most interesting insights into teams. Very recently, we all celebrated the victory of Indian team, cricket team, after 17 years. That really showed how a team can work to win a cup or something like that. Now, I chose this book not because of that. I chose this book to clearly understand how a team can go dysfunctional. During our schools and colleges, there is hardly any emphasis on teamwork. It's mostly individual and the scores and who scores first, who comes first. So very little emphasis on team. But today, if you have to survive and grow in this competitive world, a functional, effective team is very essential. So Patrick Lencioni, the author of this book called Five Dysfunctions of a Team, presents his insights on this book with a nice fable in a form of a story, which is very easy to read. So I'll quickly summarize before I go on to the panelists. So he identifies 5 dysfunctions of a team, starting with first, absence of trust. Second, fear of conflict. 3, lack of commitment. 4, avoidance of accountability. And 5, inattention to results. So these are the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And in this book, he goes on to give specific examples where a new CEO comes into an organization trying to transform the team. And one of the very reason why we build trust is your willingness to share your weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Unless you share your weaknesses and vulnerabilities with each other, the trust won't build. And you all know that we somehow refrain from doing that. So in the book, Catherine finds that when she comes and asks the employees to share about themselves, there is an element of hesitation and resistance, which clearly showed that the team members do not trust each other. So the absence of trust was found to be one of the first dysfunction, leading to fear of conflict. So typically we have a lot of meetings in organizations, with all the team members. Should there be a conflict, or should there be a differing views, it's seldom debated with passion. We normally agree to the leader's point of view, hardly anybody opening their voices or feigning a harmony. There is no real debate, just for fear of conflict. We as society, we somehow want to avoid conflict. So in the teams also, the same thing happens. So one of the best outcomes of any decision is when there is a healthy disagreement and there is agreement to disagree, and eventually, with all the varied views, you come up with the best possible decision. So in the absence of conflict, you don't get to the best possible decision, you only get to a mediocre decision. That is the second point he drives home. The third is because of the fear of conflict, there is a lack of commitment among the team members. Whenever the meeting gets over, there is no clarity on the roles and responsibilities as to who should do what, and eventually the job doesn't get done. So there is a strong lack of commitment, which is the third dysfunction. And because of the lack of commitment, there is avoidance of accountability. Typically, we are all responsible. We know every team member in a team is responsible for something. But when it comes to achieving something, they don't, because they are not accountable. So accountability is one of the key requirements for a team to function properly. So team members hesitate to confront somebody who's not accountable. Like for example, if somebody always delays the project or behind the schedule, nobody confronts that person because there is no accountability at all. Now this finally affects the results of the organization. So there is complete inattention to the results. At the end of the day, what are we striving for as a team, as an organization? To achieve the desired goals of the organization. So when there is inattention to results, they are more selfish, they are more putting their goals in front of the organization goals, and there is absolutely no cohesiveness among the team, and eventually resulting in not achieving the desired results. Now these are the 5 dysfunctions which he has shared in the book, and also how to overcome these dysfunctions with the various suggestions. So I won't take more time on this because we have some 2 lovely panelists with us today. Mr. A.S. Venkatesh is not only a leader professionally in his company, he's also a leader for Rotary International. He's part of the Rotary International board, which is actually a non-profit organization and leader among leaders. So that is a different perspective. So we'll have his perspectives on the book, and then we have Rashma Budhia, who is a young entrepreneur who's managing a team right across the country. So we'll have 2 different perspectives today from both these panelists. So let me start with my first question to Venki. So my usual question is, of course, what are your key takeaways from this book, Venki, and what are your insights from the book?
Thank you, Ram. First, I have to tell you, okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, thank you. First, I'll have to tell you something which was a big surprise to me. A book of this nature, typically a non-fiction book. I'm being very honest here. I read 132 pages without a break. Without a break. Which is, I've read a lot of such books, but I cannot remember the last instance when I could read at a stretch a book of this kind. That's because this is not very pedantic. It's not like, okay, A, B, C, do this, 1, 2, 3. It's like a story. It's like a novel. You read through a novel and acquire those, take away some points out of a novel. It's very interesting to read, so that's something I'm very happy about, that you recommended this book, and I really enjoyed reading this book. Second, as I was reading this book, I couldn't help at every step putting myself in place of Catherine to see how I would have reacted, how I would have done, or what kind of a similar situation did I face in the past. So that's even more engaging, because you're not reading, you're actually living a role there, you're living a part. It's like a part of a play where you are playing a role. So that is something that's very useful to reflect on the concepts presented by Patrick and see how much of it and how can those be applied in your own business. So one key takeaway I have, I'm being selfish here, I was trying to see what I can use in my company. So, from a very personal, selfish perspective, one thing is I realized that I was, as a leader in my organization, mistaking goodness for performance. Being good or being nice, being helpful, being sweet is no guarantee for somebody to retain their job, which is something that I was doing with my employees. Somebody was very sweet, very helpful. Even if he did not, or he or she did not deliver, I would not fire them. That's a mindset that we grow up with, and I realize that that's a big problem I have. I should be able to separate niceness with from performance and take action accordingly. So this kind of focus on the results should be the guiding factor, is something that I've learned myself, which I want to insist down the line in my organization. So if you ask me one takeaway, I would say focus on the results is something that we should repeatedly drill into the team. not be carried away by nice behavior, helpful behavior. Oh, he's always good, always smiles. And anything you ask, he gives on time. Any report you ask. I don't know if you can recall that instance where Catherine says that I was fired at one of her earlier jobs because I tolerated Fred. That was a big sentence. She said, I tolerated Fred. I should have fired him. Because I tolerated him, I got fired. That's a big takeaway for me. If you ask me one thing, that is something that I would remember.
That was a very interesting perspective. Loyalty versus performance. Do you promote loyalty or do you promote performance? This we come across in most of the organizations. Now, Vicky, I'm continuing with one other before going to Reshma. Is you handle two different organizations. One, a profitable, popular foundation. The other one, the Rotary, I wouldn't call it foundation, Rotary International. So how do you find the team's behavior? If there is one thing which is applicable in the dysfunction, what would that be?
Interestingly, one is for-profit, one is not for-profit. There are a lot of similarities in terms of team's performance. Irrespective of whether you are for-profit or not for-profit, there's a lot of similarities. Where it differs is the question of what can I say? Decision making at the top level. In an organization, you can tell down the line, do this. In a not-for-profit organization where there are volunteers, you cannot tell them do this. So that's where the team functioning differs. So one is you're dealing with a hierarchy. In a not-for-profit voluntary body, like you're not dealing with hierarchy, you're dealing with peers. So the way decisions are taken, the way conflicts are managed are very different, because here there is, at some point in time, even in this book, if you realize, at some point in time, Catherine had to say, this is what I want. And everybody had to follow. Very difficult to say that in the not-for-profit NGOs. You still have to somehow veer around to a common goal. So that is where a team functioning differs in a not-for-profit vis-a-vis a for-profit organization.
So that was an interesting perspective. Reshma, now your takeaway and insights from the book.
Thank you. See, I think I'm going to agree with a lot of things that Venki was talking about, especially first about the book when you gave the name, right? I thought about it. I looked at the book on Amazon and I'm like, okay, yet another book on team performance, right? Because you read so much about, oh, the team has to do well and these are the components that make a team, that it's just a little cliche. And then you start reading this book and the treatment is so unassuming. You don't know when it begins to engulf you. And you start, like he said, putting yourself in those roles, your team members in those roles, and you're literally living that life. So I think it's that unassuming nature of the book that made it easy to remember and easy to apply. So it is definitely not yet another book on team performance, for sure. In fact, I have possibly recommended it to maximum number of people in the last 3 weeks, because those are non-readers, but they want to make an impact in their organization. This is a great book for non-readers, or people who claim to be non-readers. Every human being is a reader. They all know story. There is a story for everyone.
Non-leader or
reader. Everyone is, there are no non-readers, right? But people believe because they haven't found their story. So I think this is a good one to start from that angle. And for me, multiple insights, but if I have to quote top of my head, the first one that really, I could resonate with. See, as a founder of a small company, what happens is initially, when you hire your first employee, then you hire your fifth, then you hire your seventh and 10th, you are very invested in their future. Individual future, right? You're looking at, oh my God, don't worry, I will make sure you're successful. I will walk with you this journey. I will take you till the next step of yours. Because they're all individual contributors, they're all reporting to you, and you're pretty much feeling invested and responsible for their, like in the phrase they have used is shepherding the career of individuals. And then when you suddenly grow as an organization, you have 35, 40, 50 people, you can't obviously be invested. You should not be invested in individual career. At a at every layer. You have to create layers not for hierarchy, but you have to create layers to actually create focus groups. And then the importance and the need for team performance. I've started asking that question to myself now. Okay, so am I investing in my immediate leadership? So we've actually started a leadership program 2 weeks ago. And it's a weekly program for the immediate 7 reportees that I have. And the whole idea is, let's invest in that, because I think we've not invested in team performance, we've invested in individual contributors. So it's not just a takeaway, it's a takeaway converted into action. I'm like that, a little more, aggressive and action oriented. So converted it into a program and we've launched it also.
That's really nice to hear that this book has enabled immediate action, and that's what we expect the audience also to do, because the read and grow is not just for theoretical purpose. Eventually it should translate into meaningful action. In fact, I recall in CAT Center, one of the our leaders in West, he was supporting a customer who was not paying on time. So he had a particular very urgent service requirement, and this leader was a service leader, and he was recommending to support the customer at that point of time. Whereas the instruction from me as a leader is, don't do it till we clear the payments or we get the payment from him. But he said, listen, at this point of time, it's important for him to do his job. We need to support him. I take the responsibility and I am accountable for collecting the money. But I will secure the happiness of the customer. So there was a conflict, but I supported this decision, and he went ahead and supported the customer. He was extremely happy, and he also paid. So why I'm sharing this is, sometimes as a leader, you need to give that leverage to the person at your risk. Of course, if he's not collecting money, I'm accountable for that. But since he did that, he did a great job for us. So if a team person has to take decisions on his own, you need to empower them, and empowerment comes only if they are accountable. Okay, so
Ram, I want to add to a little bit to this. In the example that you narrated, at some point in time you had actually, without saying it in so many words, you admitted you were wrong.
Yeah.
You were wrong. As a leader, you were willing to admit that, yes, I was wrong. Your decision was right. That is something I picked up from here. Are we ready as a leader to accept that I'm wrong on occasions? That will set the tone for the rest of them to feel that there's nothing wrong in being vulnerable. Everybody is human. That sets the trust factor, which the author talks about right at the beginning. Trust comes in when they know that the boss is also vulnerable. Then they are willing to open up. So in this case, when you said, okay, I'll go by your judgment, you are willing, as much as said, yes, my judgment was wrong. That vulnerability is a very important factor to get others to fall in line, because they know boss is not God, boss is human. So we can also be human.
In fact, coming to vulnerability, many people hesitate to admit that they don't know something. Yeah, so they try to protect themselves. In the process, they don't achieve what they want to achieve. They could seek help with any of the colleagues, but they don't do, because when they seek help, they take it as a weakness and not something they need to do. So very well pointed out, Venki, on that. So okay, now this is something very relevant to your work environment. So among all the 5 dysfunctions which has been explained in the book, which one you find commonly in your work environment, if at all?
I would think lack of accountability is something that bothers me as a boss of a company, because I encounter it all the time. What happens very often, as a group, we tend to settle for the least common denominator. If there are 10 different skill sets, everybody settles to the lowest skill set. Because anything beyond that, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be discord, disharmony. As a result, the accountability for what we set out in the beginning is not there. So lack of accountability of the bigger goal is something that I would think in my organization, I would want to revisit that part of it so that we don't settle for the least common denominator, we go for the highest common factor. Make everybody accountable for this, not accountable for this. I think that is something that I would want to look at in my company.
So you will raise the standards. Are you planning to have some metrics for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I've already worked at this afternoon. I sent out a circular to the core group, not everybody. To the core group, I said, let's have a brainstorming session on what we want the goals to be. Then each one's responsibility to get the team to subscribe to or buy into that goal and not decide on something which is lower. This buying in is important for accountability. Otherwise, I'm not accountable. Unless I feel it's part of my decision, why should I be accountable? So how to get that buy-in is a part of our process now, and we have already set that in motion this afternoon.
Wonderful. Another example of action taken based on the book. Okay. Rashma.
Very interestingly, the second dysfunction, which is fear of conflict, right? And conflict always being associated with fear, therefore making it negative. But then the book actually showcases conflict as an important part of team building because you are all experts in your field. So you are bringing disagreements or no, you're bringing opinions or you're bringing perspectives which could be visualized as conflict. But then people think conflict is something to run away from or to avoid because, because it's not a place of comfort, right? And the minute you associate the emotion of fear, I read once, I had done a very interesting, exercise of translating the holy book of Jains. It's called Bhaktamat Stotra. So the idea was they wanted it translated from Hindi to English. So they reached out to me. I'm not a Jain, so they therefore wanted somebody who's not to be able to read it very subjectively, objectively, and be able to translate that entire book. It was a 1-year exercise for me. In that, there was a very beautiful sentence that stayed with me. Fear is an emotion. Fearlessness is an action. So you can't take action on fear and you can't feel fearlessness. Right? So the famous ad that says ki you have to take the action with fear. Right? The whole idea is when you are taking a fearless action, the emotion you're feeling is of fear. Simple. So you can't move away from it. You can't say, let's feel fearlessness and take action. So I think somewhere that stayed with me. Then I read about fear of conflict and I realized that is why people freeze in meetings. The minute they face conflict, they freeze because they don't know that they are supposed to take action with that fear. And then they say, okay, and they have small talks and distractions and then the meeting doesn't really conclude. So very beautifully he talks about addressing the conflict and getting through it. Right? So you have to get through it. It's okay to disagree, but have the conflict, bring it on the table, fight it out, be in that room, but bring it. Don't avoid it. So that I thought was, it was, very interesting and that is something that is going to stay.
So is that what you find in your team?
Yes, always, because they are scared of conflicts, right? People are scared of conflict. They just want to be the one who's not disagreeing or they don't want to be the one who's raised a point and is not a people person. Oh, I'm not a people person. I'm not going to be considered friendly. I may not get invited to the next event because I'm constantly disagreeing with people. So that fear is what is holding a lot of them back.
Very well said. In fact, courage is the word. Courage is the word to overcome the fear. And it takes a lot of guts for you to state your opinion, especially when your boss has a different opinion, which is against that. That's where you have this courage to fight. That is one of the most required thing for the team if they have to really come up with a great solution. So that's interesting perspective. Let's move on to the next question. So among the 5 dysfunctions presented by Patrick Lencioni, which one do you find the most challenging to address? Can I take this one? Yeah.
This as I was reading that, something very interesting came to my mind. He's talking about lack of commitment, where in a meeting the discussions are vague, nothing specific. Everybody talks a lot, but nothing is said. There's a lot of talk, but nothing is said, which is something we also encounter in our organization. 2-hour long meeting, at the end of it, if you ask what was decided, nothing was decided. It goes back to our philosophy of errors of omission will never come to light. Errors of commission will come to light. Not doing something, nobody will notice. If you do something that turns out to be wrong, everybody will notice. So people take the path of least resistance by not doing something, which is what happens in a dysfunctional team where nobody commits to anything. Everybody talks, everybody spends a lot of time, nothing is committed. So this is something I've noticed in our core group meetings also in my organization. The way, as Patrick talks about, is get them focused on specific things. And don't let them leave the room till they reach a way forward or a target or a goal or whatever. Not be happy that we have spent 2 hours. Whether you spend 2 hours or 20 minutes doesn't matter, but ultimately do you have a group goal which you all buy in, which all of you subscribe to, all of you feel that's part of something that you had a role in deciding. Another way to go about is give a diktat from the top, but that is not a teamwork. So if you really want the team to function, every member of the team should feel that yes, I contributed my bit and together we decided on something. It's my goal versus our goal. My goals will always be different from our goals. So are we making them subscribe to our goals rather than my goals? So that is something that I would focus on, and I feel it's a great learning from this.
So accountability is something which you'll find it challenging to make it happen for the team. Okay. What about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. He was also talking about commitment and accountability both, right? And I'm just going to add to what he said because the response is very similar. What is most challenging? Why is commitment and accountability most challenging with the team is they don't have a shared vision, possibly, which is the buy-in. Right? So have we invested enough time with the team to give them a shared vision, which all of us can share? Which means have they participated, giving a vision statement versus building one together. So all of them find a part of themselves when they read that sentence. And once that comes in is only when I think commitment and accountability can come in. But a lot of us don't start from there. We start from giving them the vision and hoping that they will run with it like it is their baby. And then when they don't run with it like it's their baby, then we wonder, Arey, I'm so committed, how come they are not as committed? Because it's not theirs to begin with. Yeah, it's so that shared vision will bring in the buy-in, and do we start there? No. Therefore, accountability and commitment is a challenge. Always. And I think today's generation or the startup world calls it the entrepreneur mindset. Right? We need to build teams with entrepreneur mindset. That only means that each of them have a buy-in, they have a skin in the game. Because that's what entrepreneurs have. We have skin in the game in our company. But in a large corporate, they don't have entrepreneur mindset because they don't have skin in the game. They have processes, workflows, KRA. You meet it, you go home. So that little bit and being able to find that mix and how to do it is a challenge. Easily addressable, but definitely, something that is a challenge.
Now that you talked about the vision, that's a very interesting point because I find in most of the companies you have a big board saying vision, vision. But if you go to the employee and ask, hey, what is your vision, what is that? That kind of a gap is there.
Yes.
So is there anything specific you do to share the vision? Like, this is our vision. But over a period of time when the employees come, they don't really care about vision. We become very micro,
yes,
achieving results month after month. So how do you have any mechanism or practice to share the vision so that all the team members speak the same language as you?
See, very interestingly, a lot of the times if we go back and read the vision, they are written being company centered. The vision has to be written being person-centered or employee-centered. See, I'm a design thinking practitioner, right? For us, the first stage is empathy. How do you use empathy to build your entire company? And empathy is not just a fancy word. It just means that every person who walks into that company, how do they feel like that was written for me versus that was written for the company? And now I'm only a facilitator for that. So the minute they can read it and feel like it was written for me, it becomes person-centered versus writing for them. And there is an entire science behind how do you write and how do you build visions that is empathetic towards every employee, irrespective of, every future employee also. So there is, to answer your question, yes, there are mechanics, and which is why it's staying grounded.
Is there a vision for your company?
Yes, we have a vision for our company, and we actually test it with people every time they join, right? Because it's nothing grand. Visions are not supposed to be grand, right? It is as simple as being the happiest workplace until they are working here and when they move out for them and their family. So it just brings in the whole family culture into the whole system, but happy is the big word for us. It has nothing to do with anything else. That drives our company, honestly.
So you enable happy employees?
We enable happy place, which enables happy employees. Yeah, we want to be a place of abundance. So that's how it is.
Venki, what about...
Before you embarrass me, let me admit. No, we do have a vision statement, but honestly, I don't think many of my employees would even know. Though it's there in my notice board in big letters. Unless during lunchtime they didn't have anything better to do, they may not have read that. Yes, I need to change. I've learned something today from you.
No, you're no different, Venki, because most of the organizations, they have a vision and there is a gap. The employee, they do not even know in the first place. So in my training programs, actually, I ask them to read it twice and at least share with me what they understood from the vision. Forget about remembering it. That's the kind of, because it's a very valid point. When you have a shared vision, the team will function like anything. So that is a very valid point. So the fourth question I have for you is, okay, in your opinion, which of the 5 dysfunctions is the most crucial to overcome for a team to be effective? And what makes it so pivotal?
See, it's a combination of all. I wouldn't want to pinpoint one of those 5 as the most crucial. It's a combination of several things. I would think more in an Indian context. If, as a team, everybody feels empowered to speak his mind, not hurting anyone, but in the interest of a common good, if we can enable everybody to have the guts and the courage and the desire to speak, I think that is the biggest catalyst for a functioning team. Let me elaborate a little bit. Because I'm drawing from my organization's experience and see where it connects or where it doesn't connect. In a meeting, nobody would come up with a very creative, innovative suggestion. But post-meeting, they'll come individually and tell me, sir, I think we can do this. I've noticed this on several occasions. Now, after reading this, when I look back at why did this happen, he is worried that his idea will be stolen by somebody and somebody else will take the credit for that. So he wants to make sure that I know it is his idea. So whenever anybody gets the credit, it is him and not somebody else. This is a recipe for disaster. You don't trust your colleagues. You don't think of the company's good. You think of your own goals. So if I can enable everybody in the organization to speak without fear, or without worrying or without distrusting their colleagues, if we can create that kind of an environment, that kind of an ambience in the organization, that will be the takeaway for any good functioning team. So let them talk, let them share, let them together discuss, let them discuss contradictions, but let them have the courage to do all of these and not keep quiet and say, yes, I agree. When everybody says I agree in the first 5 minutes, I feel there's something wrong. So if I can enable and encourage people to talk, I think that is the biggest takeaway from this.
Okay, now that you touched upon a very sensitive point, Venki, the people will be willing to talk and be open only if you're tolerant to mistakes, right? Possibly if somebody had made a mistake earlier, based on the reaction, they will keep quiet the next time. So how is your tolerance to mistakes in your organization?
A good point, Ram. Because your behavior the second time depends on the response the first time. It's a given. So we are all conditioned. It's like Pavlov's response. We are conditioned to behave based on our experience of the past. So it's critical for the team, not just the boss, not the CEO. It's critical for the team to take in opinions and react to the opinion and not to the person. See, it's like this, somebody says, oh, that's a stupid idea. Even though he or she says stupid idea, it invariably means the person is stupid. That gives a different, then that person becomes defensive. So as long as we create a culture of reacting to ideas and thoughts rather than individuals, it will have a very harmonious relationship. So the CEO's job is to make sure this culture is prevalent across the team members so that in the group, people are encouraged to react, but encouraged to react to ideas and not to individuals.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Reshma?
The question, right?
Yeah. What is...
Sorry.
What is it which will overcome...
Which is the most toughest one to overcome,
yeah.
right? Yes. Because I went into
most
the
crucial to overcome.
safe zone, yes.
For team to be effective.
Right. So I'm going to again go back to the point that has stuck, then resonated the most, which is the fear of conflict, right? And the reason I mentioned it is difficult to overcome is because of emotion, but conflict comes from point of views and perspective, which comes from experience and expertise. And that's what we want. We want experience and expertise, but then we want to give them the safe space or the safe zone to be able to put their point of view. So that what they think is a conflict is not really a conflict. It is only a completely different perspective to the same business challenge. And again, going back, it is the most difficult to overcome because we don't teach our teams techniques of putting down their perspectives without emotional baggage. What we only give them are words. So round table or a war room. First of all, you call that a war room. I don't understand why, right? So you come with all your shield and armor and you're already feeling like you're in this zone. And then you're sitting across the table and the loudest gets to speak the most. The quietest has a point of view but already feels shy about it. And we haven't given our folks techniques to be able to put their point of view and be also critical about it. I'll just give you an example. So what we do is we have a chart paper with a quadrant. And the quadrant says critical, important, good to do and time pass. That's it. Now if I have put a perspective, I'm going to also write it on a post-it and on my own decide, okay, this perspective is critical to this business challenge. Possibly all of us will put critical. Then we just go back and say, okay, now take 5 minutes and see if you want to move it around. Because when you've heard everybody's perspective, you realize yours is good to do point of view. Because somebody else has put a more critical perspective about this. And you may move your post-it. Nobody is judging, no conversation. Even the quietest person has to put up their post-it. So they don't have a choice. And that allows everybody to feel heard. That they have a voice. Right? They have a shared voice here. And then you move around and now you pick up, okay, if these are all critical, let's address them all. Now we can't walk out of this meeting without addressing. But if all of our point of views were time pass, then chalo theek hai, this meeting is over. We can talk about it later. So this is another technique that we learn in design thinking and this applies for a lot of the way we handle team meetings. So I think this is the toughest one to handle, but then there are tools and techniques available.
Wonderful. So the conflict.
One second. I want to, she set me over thinking on something else. This quadrant that you talk about is wonderful. I recall in this book, there is a particular instance when Catherine calls for the off-site meeting. The marketing man says, I have a customer call.
Correct.
Okay. Now this offsite meeting was a customer call. A CEO's normal reaction would be, oh, customer is important, go attend that. The difference here is, what is important versus what is urgent. Everything that's important need not be urgent. So, that call has to be taken at the right time so that we don't confuse or mistake as to what is important versus what is urgent. And Catherine in this case very rightly decides, customer call can be rescheduled, will you please come for the offsite meeting.
Exactly. Absolutely.
When I read that, I was thinking, what would I have done? I would have probably said, no, go for the customer call.
Correct.
I would have probably said that. But then after reading it, I realized that this was the correct way to do it.
In fact, one of the excuses the team members give is quoting customers if they want to avoid this.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very important that we understand that what is important and urgent. It's a good time management quadrant, right?
Yeah.
Most important, most urgent kind of thing. Another thing to encourage people to come out with their opinions and voices is tolerance to failures. See, somehow, right from school days and college days, failure is condemned. Once you fail, people say you're a failure. Failing is only one step towards the next thing, and we treat failure as bad, which is not correct, you know. The same thing is carried to the organization. So if I fail, what will happen? So that fear of failure alone will make many people quiet. Now, before going to the next question, do you encourage quiet people to talk?
We encourage the quieter people to participate. They have a voice. An introvert is an introvert, should not become an extrovert, but that doesn't mean they don't have a point of view or an opinion. It's unfair to assume that because they are quiet, they don't have a point of view. Which is why we give them other ways of sharing what they need to. And it's a company. You create that space where now they are going to come in and it's home. They are not going to talk at home. They don't agree with something, but however quiet they may be, they will raise a point saying, I'm not eating this bottle guard, whatever happens. They could be an introvert, they will not eat it. You just have to create that space for them at office also. And by the way, just every meeting should serve food. If you're having a meeting beyond 30 minutes, you should serve food. You should serve popcorn. You should serve chocolates. You should serve kadle mithai, whatever, your Akshayam snacks. But you should not have meetings without that because your brain gets so fatigued just listening to 10 voices at a time sometimes that you don't want to contribute. But when you're munching, no, you tend to.
In fact, we normally have meetings to eat also.
I thought that's one way we can get everybody to open their mouth.
Sounded rude sitting here. I would have said it there.
Yeah. So, in fact, meeting goes with eating, you know. There is no meeting without eating. Yes. And there is more eating than meeting, you know, most of the time. So that's
Ram, before you move, just a small point about encouraging people who have not participated to participate in a meeting. There's also a danger of being protective, being very motherly or a parent kind of a thing, which again can get dysfunctional as Patrick has mentioned. So it's a question of creating space but not being protective.
Correct.
Create the space and let them do. Don't get overly protective. Oh, I will take care even if you make a mistake. That's not the way to go forward.
Of course, that addresses the lack of accountability issue. Yeah. Okay, so there are a lot of questions from the public, but last question from my side. What is your message to the young leaders with respect to the dysfunctions? How should they handle the teams?
You know, I was once told that every team goes through these 4 stages. So the team, there is forming, right? Forming of the team. Then there is storming of the team. So you are going to storm together. You are going to fight. Then there is norming, which is you normalize. You understand each other. You understand the wavelength. You understand what works and what does not work. And then there is performing. So you have forming, storming, norming and performing. And that journey has to be taken. It's as simple as that. Team performance is not a one-off activity that can be done in one session. You talk to them, you bring them to, make them give a book and then say, now you're ready. If in this book, Catherine very clearly creates it as a journey, a 1-year journey. Right? Look at that patience. I was amazed. I'm like, is she serious? Is she saying she's going to do 4 offsites? What's wrong with her? Where's the time? Because we're running all the time. We have client deliverables. We have to do things. Work doesn't stop because you're forming a team and training them. You have to find the time for that. You have to find a method to that whole madness. So I think they have to get onto that journey quick enough, but they have to be patient enough for it to. They have to keep walking with their teams. Even if, there is a failure, there is a faltering in between, you come back, you take a step back, you start again, but you have to be on that journey because a team will form, storm, norm, only then perform. They cannot perform in step 2. So I think that is for me something that we should all young entrepreneurs should remember. Just patience and walk that journey.
That's a wonderful message. Venki.
I just have only one message. Accept being vulnerable. Make mistakes. Own up your mistakes. But don't try to create an image of, I will never make a mistake. Be vulnerable. Make mistakes. Be human. You will succeed.
That's very powerful, actually, and very difficult too. Okay, so now I'm coming to the public questions. I've done with my questions. So the first question is to Venki. How have you tailored the principles from the 5 dysfunctions of the team to fit the unique challenges of the civil construction industry? This is from Rekha.
Okay. Very, very focused question. So I like that. Because this is something right in my comfort zone. Because you're talking about my business where I've spent 35 years. See, one thing in civil construction industry, one thing I would say I've learned from this book is to let people take decisions and fail. I am confident that in construction industry nobody fails more than once, making the same mistake. Give them the space to make one mistake once. If we give them the space and confidence, you will have a good team in place. Don't pull them up for the first time they commit a mistake. It's okay as long as they own up that mistake. No worries. Let's not make the same mistake a second time. So that is number 1. Number 2, there's always, as I learned from this, there's always a clash between, we have, let's say, 14 sites going on right now. So each site has got a group, a team, as per this terminology, a team. Which means there are 14 site teams working in 14. But all of them are working for the same company. So company has got certain goals, certain targets, certain vision, certain objectives. Which also means these 14 sites share a lot of resources, which is centralized resources. There are individual resources, centralized resources. Oftentimes, I have noticed that they're not willing to share information with another team for a shared resource. Let's say a tower crane is there, but I'm just giving a specific example in my case. Let's say a tower crane is put to you. We will not be having 14 tower cranes. It's too much of a capex to really spend on. So there's a tower crane in one site, which is not being used. Will that person be willing to say, you can shift this to another site so that you can benefit? Or will that person not even bother about other sites? That's a question of whether it's, I'm working for my team or I'm working for our team. This is very common in construction. Now, I'm just giving you one example. There are several such resources which can be shared. Even engineers can be shared. Because at different stages we have different skill sets which are required at a construction site. When we are at the foundation stage, we are talking about structural specialists. When we are at the finishing stage, we are talking about finishing specialists or masonry specialists. So these resources can be shared, which is not very common in my industry. So we are now, after this book, that is one thing I'm going to implement of how do we share resources optimally so that everybody is committed to the common goal of the company. The moment they start sharing resources, they feel, oh, that is also my site. This is also my site. Rather than owning up one small portion of the company and say, I'll own only this and I won't bother about the rest. That is again something that I would implement in my organization.
Yeah, sharing resources and of course they should feel that they won't lose credit if they do that. One of the things is getting the credit.
Moment they start sharing, including manpower, they are no more attached to one site. They are attached to the company. So that the common goal is everybody's goal rather than one site's goal.
Thank you, Venki, for that. Next questions to Reshma. How does your expertise in design thinking help in addressing the 5 dysfunctions within your team at Toss the Coin? This is from Bharat, Chennai.
Yeah, see, what really we learn in design thinking is, so if you look at a hammer, right, a hammer is not just meant for nailing something. You can even extract a nail, you can break open a lock, you can murder somebody, you can protect yourself, you can, hit a table. It is a tool. And you decide in what situation, how you want to use that tool because you've understood the strength of the tool. So what design thinking does is it gives us many such tools, irrespective of situations, and we decide how we apply. For example, I just gave you the example of the 4 quadrants. Now that 4 quadrant could have been applied for multiple places. So like that, what happens is because I have those tools, I'm able to equip my team with a very functional way of handling each of them. Trust, accountability, commitment, right, conflict, and results. For each of them, now we have tools. We exactly know how to take them through that journey using a method. The method to the madness is there, thanks to design thinking.
That's how your design thinking comes into picture. Thank you, Reshma, for that. Venki, next question. Can you share an example of when recognizing and addressing a dysfunction turned a project around? Upstart from Chennai.
Turned the project around. It was not very recent, but pre-COVID days, where I remember we were way behind schedules in one of our projects, which was bothering me as a CEO, as a boss. I was bothered about that, but I couldn't really put my finger on what was wrong because we had deployed enough resources, enough manpower. But then once when we had a meeting at site, I realized that nobody was talking about the overall completion schedule. That nobody knew. It's only the project manager had in his room, in his cabin, he had a chart saying this is my project schedule, which nobody had ever seen. Nobody had ever seen. Each one was talking about their own schedules, which had nothing to do with the overall schedule of the project. That is where we were going wrong, which I had not noticed. So after that meeting, then everybody was asked to give their individual schedules, and then they sat there, worked out a common schedule. I wasn't present there. But I said, you work out a common schedule after everybody buys into that. And they came up with schedule, and after that they stuck to it. Which was I would say accidentally I got into a solution. That was not the intent, but accidentally I wanted to deliver something. By accident I got it, which is something now in theory also I see is a way to go forward.
So the shared result help you overcome. Yeah, shared vision. Next question to Reshma. What unique challenges do you face in fostering trust and accountability in a marketing consulting environment, and how do you overcome them? Prasad from Chennai.
See, what happens now in a marketing agency only for that matter, and especially in today's education that we're getting, almost every designer is a content writer and every content writer is a designer, and then there is this intertwining of skills because suddenly there is Canva, there are AI tools, everybody believes they can write and design. Really not but then when you start putting all of them into a meeting room, right, they begin to question each other's capability and ability. And for me, therefore, then for them to trust, and it's all pressure, it's all high pressure, it's all delivering towards the client where the client's goal will get impacted. So to be able to know that if I have committed to this and with my skill I'm going to deliver, to be able to trust that yes, they will deliver because you can't do anything about it. Only on that day are you going to know whether it's been done. Because ideation can happen any point of time. Till the last minute I may not know what is that creative I'm going to make to announce that client's product launch, and it may come at 4 in the morning and by 6 I would have delivered it. But until the previous night, I'm saying don't worry. Tomorrow you will have it. So just to be able to build that trust, no, it is not easy because it's very fluid, very intangible. You can't measure it. There is no formula to it, no formula to ideation, no formula to content. Your headline versus my headline. There is no method to, know which is right. You just have to trust that I've understood the tone of voice of the client and I'm going to. So I think, That is where, yes.
Great, thank you. Now this is an open question. How do you keep your team focused on collective goals rather than individual achievements? Gautami from Chengalpattu.
I would think recognition and reward should also be collective. Moment you start rewarding individuals, the goal cannot be collective. Everybody in the team should be recognized, everybody in the team should be rewarded. Ultimately, see, human nature is craving for recognition. That's something we cannot wish away. And there's nothing wrong with it either. So if the organization's way of recognition and reward is for a team and not for individuals, the goals will also be a collective goal and not individual goals.
Wonderful. So reward for collective goals and not individual achievements. I think that's a very, very valid point. How do you create a culture where constructive feedback is both given and received openly?
First of all, there has to be a way to know feedback is constructive. So teaching people what is the real meaning of constructive feedback is very important, right? Because a lot of times it becomes very subjective. I believe my feedback is constructive, but it's not. So just to be able to define that if a feedback is meeting the dash, dash and dash, which could be results, obviously. Like if that is addressing a result and if it is towards a particular expertise I bring to the table, it is a constructive feedback. Right? But then after that, I think, honestly, it is a huge challenge. Because at the end of the day, a feedback is a feedback that nobody likes. That word itself nobody likes.
I think criticism is a better word.
Yeah, I think it's all like how you said, no, that there is tolerance for failure. I'm saying there's no tolerance for success only. People don't have tolerance for anything. So constructive feedback, teach them how to give it, then have a method to measure it, and teach people how to... The feedback is for my work, not for Reshma Budhia. The feedback is not for the person, like he said. The feedback is for that project or for that work, right? Constantly, that EQ has to be very high. Your emotional intelligence has to be very high to be able to figure that out. Yeah, it's a tough one. It comes with experience. I think you need grey hair.
I think feedback should be in such a way that you should always say what needs to be done rather than what's not done.
And who doesn't, those who don't like it will not like it. You have to say it and you have to believe that you've been on the right path. So I think their assertiveness helps.
Yeah, and typically when you give her, hey, you didn't do it right.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Like, hey, if you'd done it this way, it would have worked better for you. I think,
yes.
to me, that's
you can, yeah.
Okay, next question to Venki, you can take it. How important is role clarity in preventing dysfunctions, and how do you maintain it? It's Premika from Sri City.
There has to be clarity on roles. There cannot be ambiguity. Ambiguity will not take you anywhere. Clarity on roles is essential. At the same time, again, I'm going back to the same point about buying into a collective goal. So, this individual's role to get the result is a collective result. There are different, like in our body, eyes as a function, legs have a function, ears have a function, but together they work as a body. Same way in an organization, again, there are individual roles but collective delivery. Roles have to be very clear, clarify. What is it they expect to do has to be very clear. Ambiguity will not take us anywhere. At the same time, without sacrificing the collective vision or a goal.
Again, the message comes to collective vision and goal. Now, this question has been answered in a way, but I'm still asking it from Saravanan from Puducherry. How do you cultivate trust among team members who are reluctant to open up?
That's what I think. Time. Giving them the time and the safe zone to be themselves and be authentic, and letting people know that you're not being judged, and which starts from the leader. The title of that chapter, I think, is Getting Naked, right? So it starts from the leader. I am going to stand here and first tell you where I failed. And then you start telling me, and normalizing that is going to be a great way, actually.
I want to add a little to that. Not trusting generally comes from because of two reasons. One, when you feel you are superior, you feel it's not worth your time talking about anything with a bunch of idiots. Or you feel you are inferior, they're worried about making a fool of yourself. So the The role is really to make sure that all of us are the same, we are on the same page. If that kind of a space is created, nobody is inferior, nobody is superior, they will trust and start speaking up.
That's a very, very profound point. Like, make them feel equal, and give them the space and they will open up. Now, the final question for the evening. What are the strategies for encouraging healthy conflict and addressing destructive conflict within your team? Satish from Chennai. I think both of you can take a call on this.
Like I've said that, I have brought the quadrant again, so I will keep it quick.
See, any conflict is healthy as long as I said earlier, you don't target individuals. You target their thoughts, their ideas, their suggestions, and discuss. It's still healthy. So, as long as the meeting can be kept in a way that nobody targets any individual, it's a very healthy conflict, and that should be the objective for any group. Don't talk about individuals, about characteristics. Talk about what they have said. That will be a very healthy conflict to have.
So focus on the issue and not on the person.
Yes.
Wonderful. So that brings us to the end of this panel discussion on 5 dysfunctions of a team. Thank you so much, Venki and Reshma, for sparing your time and sharing your insightful thoughts. I think we all have learned something.